Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes React. I am Office Bloke Dave Ling.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
I'm Office Bloke Daz.
Collectively we are the Office Blokes. It is true. We've got a gaming channel, haven't we, Mike?
We have got a gaming channel coming really, really soon, hopefully this weekend. Yeah, got a bit of content done already, haven't we? It's been a great laugh. So, go down and check it out. Yeah, have a look.
Yeah, if you want to see us a bit of friendly banter / arguing, then it's for you.
Yeah.
Right, Petroleum, modern history of oil on a map.
Yeah, it seems to be a hot topic at the moment with what's going on around the globe with oil prices spiking, people inflation going up everywhere around the world.
Russian oil exports being banned as well.
Yeah,
from
from
which is a huge thing,
many
isn't
countries.
it?
Well,
Yeah.
not completely, but in many countries, yeah. But yeah, it's a big problem. So it's be interesting to see who's got it, who has it, and who had it, who doesn't have it anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
Haven't we got? There's a load of
Sea oil.
Yeah, here though, or is it off Scotland?
We only get 9% of our
Pretty much is a thing.
oil,
Yeah.
I think, from Russia.
Because we have gas as well, don't we?
We do.
We don't see gas as well.
See gas as well, yeah.
So, yeah, fairly low percentage reliance on Russia, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's get into it then. Petroleum, modern history of oil on a map. Let's do it.
Petroleum, or crude oil, is a fossil fuel. It is the result of organic matter transforming into hydrocarbons over millions of years. Generally buried in the form of a deposit, crude oil sometimes appears on the surface of the earth, which is why it has been known to man since ancient times. Around the world, oil was used as sealing material in construction and for medical purposes. But it is only in the middle of the 19th century that its consumption would explode. Europe and North America, in the midst of industrial revolution, have rapidly increasing energy requirements that are met mainly by coal. Interest in oil intensifies throughout the world. From the Russian Empire to Europe to North America, the first modern drilling location. In the United States, this causes a rush of black gold, and the country becomes the largest oil producer in the world. Initially, distilled oil replaces the burning of whale oil in lamps. It offers a better calorific value than coal and is easier to transport than gas. Oil consumption rises in the early 20th century, especially in the field of transport, with the development of the automobile, the reconversion of ship engines, and the aviation boom during World War I. Crude oil, once extracted, is distilled in a refinery to separate the hydrocarbons as needed. The lighter molecules evaporate to the top of the distillation column, where the temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius. Liquefied petroleum gases are harvested and used, among other things, in lighters and in kitchens. Between 30 and 105 degrees Celsius, gasoline for cars is produced. Between 105 and 160 degrees Celsius, naphtha is created, used in petrochemicals in order to create plastics, synthetic textiles, drugs, and cosmetics. Between 160 and 230 degrees Celsius, kerosene is obtained for aviation. Between 230 and 425 degrees Celsius, diesel is created for cars and heating oil for domestic purposes. Finally, the thick, high-sulfur residue is heated to about 450 degrees Celsius to form heavy fuel oil used by ships, and to obtain bitumen used for road construction and roofing.
That's interesting to start with, the way that's done.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. All of this
the
derived
different
from
levels,
crude oil,
which I never
knew.
I vaguely remember that from
interesting.
high school, seeing a very similar
I've
diagram.
never seen anything like that.
Well, I was in the oil and gas industry for many years, and in the shipping side, and you get to know about different things that go on in upstream, downstream, what happens with different sort of like products, how they're manufactured. You sit in meetings where people are talking what they're looking for, and you're putting together the plan to make it happen.
Yeah.
As far as the logistics side of it goes, but it's
Well, I suppose the fuel is a big part of it as well. When you're shipping across the world, I mean, it's a big sort of part of the expense, isn't it?
Yeah, but the one thing I didn't know there was how diesel was such a higher temperature than what petroleum was.
Yeah.
I knew it burnt at a higher temperature, because if you just held a lighter to diesel, it's not going to do anything, is it?
Yeah,
But if
so
you
it's
did
got
that
a
with
higher thing,
petrol, it's
yeah,
going up.
That's right, yeah. Wow.
Oil was transported in barrels with a capacity of 42 US gallons, or slightly less than 159 liters. The barrel thus became the unit for setting oil prices. more and more oil deposit discoveries are made worldwide, including in Venezuela, which becomes the second largest global producer. In the Middle East, where Britain is present, Western companies seize the new market, giving a portion of their profits to the local country through royalties. During World War II, demand for oil skyrockets, and the resource becomes a major international issue. At the end of the war, the United States signs an alliance with Saudi Arabia, guaranteeing security of the country in return for privileged access to its oil. Western companies dominating oil markets contribute to nationalist movements in producing countries. In Saudi Arabia, an agreement is signed allowing the country to receive 50% of oil profits. In Iran, negotiations with the Anglo-Persian oil company fail, following which the Prime Minister nationalizes the country's oil. In response, the US and the UK secretly organize a coup to overthrow the Prime Minister. The Shah of Iran remains in power and then allows the exploitation of oil in the country by a consortium of Western companies. In the USSR, the discovery...
It's also corrupt,
Wow,
isn't it?
just a
the
bit,
whole
I mean,
industry.
It's what turns the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why
Of
everyone
course
needs
it is.
it.
That's why everyone says, you know, a lot of the wars in the Middle East, that's what it's
Yeah.
all about.
It's like, you know, I know it's your country, but we're going to have all your oil, but we'll give you 50% of profits
We'll
back.
give you
Yeah,
some
but
of
what
it.
you got to remember is a lot of these countries weren't technologically
Yeah, I know.
advanced to explore
Yeah.
for oil.
Yeah.
I
So
get
they
it.
sent
Yeah, true,
BP and Shell, people like, you know, companies like that, oil exploration companies,
Yeah.
who could.
It's not as simple as just sticking a straw in the ground and
No,
going, you're
correct,
a billionaire.
correct.
You know,
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And it seems like we're on the winning side at the moment as well, so I'm not slagging it off.
oil fields in Western Siberia pushes the country to invest in its exploitation. Plentiful and cheap oil overtakes coal to become the primary source of energy in the world. So far, its price remains below $3 a barrel. 5 major oil-producing countries decide to unite to derive more benefits. They create OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Together, they want to counter the dominance of Western companies, to increase oil prices, and to have a common policy. The organization would gradually be joined by new nations. In 1972, the United States reaches peak production and is forced to import oil to meet its increasing needs. As the United Kingdom withdraws from the Middle East, security in the region is provided by Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are armed by the West.
You know when you get all these like doomsday prepper types,
Mm.
and I know that I'm a little bit like that, but I'm not in this sort of crazy way.
Yeah.
Some of them, you know, people are preparing for like solar flares or for zombie apocalypses and stuff.
Millennials, we like to call them.
They're usually older. They're usually
Nutcases, that's what we normally call them.
A load of them years ago were preparing for peak oil, which was where essentially the oil runs out because the demand overstrips the supply, and then you're at a point where it's on the decline. So you get preppers that the whole thing is peak oil. That's what they go on about. So if they sat around the table with the other ones, they're going on about zombies, they're going on about peak oil,
That'll
they're going on
this
about
side.
solar flares.
Ice walls at the end of the world.
Yeah.
Must be absolutely barrel of laughs.
It's just mad how everyone,
Barrels.
all those people have got their own.
Sorted there.
Was that a joke, that? Yeah.
I know, but it's zombies for me. That's what I prepare for.
After the Yom Kippur War between Israel and the Arab states of Egypt, Syria and Jordan, OPEC for the first time uses oil as a political weapon. An oil embargo is imposed on Israel's allies and production slows to inflate the price of oil. This is the first oil crisis which hits industrialized countries whose economies now depend on the black gold. Countries try to reduce their oil consumption and invest in alternatives such as nuclear and hydropower, or reinvest in coal. Oil companies in turn explore the world in search of new deposits. Sources at sea, called offshore sites, are discovered and exploited, particularly in the North Sea. The Soviet Union becomes the largest producer of oil in the world, while in the United States, production increases with the exploitation of Alaskan oil. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution takes place. The Shah's regime is overthrown and replaced by an Islamic republic that sets up an anti-Western policy. Oil production in the country falls, causing the second oil crisis.
I think didn't work out well for him, that coup, did it? If production
really.
just folds, or did they run out?
Yeah,
Well, they've not run out.
I think there's plenty there still, isn't there?
So is it just the infrastructure and the exportation that collapsed?
Wasn't that the Iraq-Iran war?
I'm not sure.
That was like late 70s, wasn't it?
I'm sure
Early
it was.
80s.
Yeah, something like that.
It's crazy seeing the price just increase so much on the left with that graph as well.
Yeah, it did.
I know,
It
yeah.
went up from like $3 to like
Going up.
$32.
Yeah.
Following border disputes, tensions between Iran and Iraq lead to 8 years of war.
There you go.
Globally, non-OPEC oil production rises and exceeds production by OPEC countries. Henceforth, supply and demand sets the price for a barrel rather than OPEC. However, for industrialized countries, the stability of the Middle East still remains a priority. Thus, when Iraq and Iran begin to target oil facilities in the Persian Gulf, hundreds of Western military vessels step in to ensure the supply of oil. At the end of the war, Iraq is weakened and indebted to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. But having received large amounts of military equipment, the country has the most powerful army in the region. Iraq takes advantage of the situation to invade Kuwait following a border dispute. An international coalition is formed under the UN and led by the United States to intervene and neutralize the Iraqi army. This time, the United States establishes a permanent presence in the region by installing military bases and signing defense agreements with Gulf monarchies. The country imposes a series of embargoes against Iran and Iraq, which it considers rogue states. Saudi Arabia, for its part, wants to once again become a major producer of oil. The country has the largest known oil reserves in the world and floods the market to become the largest producer of crude. In Russia, new investment revives the oil industry.
They have a pipeline that runs from on the eastern side, all the way to the western side, because most of the oil's refined on the eastern side. So they have a pipeline that runs all the way across country that you can see in parts.
Really?
Yeah, it's above ground.
Russia?
No, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Oh,
Yeah,
right,
so
okay.
you used to spend time in places like Jubail, Dammam, all that kind of stuff on that side, and then it goes to the other side, which is like Jeddah, and then in the middle you got Riyadh, but it all goes through, so it's easy to transport that.
Because
coming
that's
to
where
Europe
the
because it comes up
ships are. And
comes up the Suez Canal. Yeah,
of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and that strait where it says UAE, that little green
Yeah.
sort of like point as it goes up, that's the Strait of Hormuz, I think it's called.
Yeah.
It's one of the busiest shipping lanes for oil
Wow.
in the world.
I'm not surprised with all the producers.
Because you've got
around there.
Iran,
It's a
Iraq,
huge amount.
Kuwait, Saudi,
Yeah.
Qatar, UAE, all coming from there.
Wow.
Yeah, all going through there. And that's where the trouble sort of like always flares, because the tip of that green bit, believe it or not, belongs to Oman. It doesn't belong to the UAE, or it's showing
really?
green there. The tip of it is Oman, yeah.
Ah,
Wow.
hell.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's mad how much global policy is decided by oil production at this point.
Yeah.
And then when you get somewhere like Iran, who replaces with the government with more of a fundamentalist religious government, then it folds and then kind of go into insignificance a little bit compared to its neighbours who have stuck with the oil, being the main thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the time, that's the main production in some of these places.
It's shaped the
I know
last
it's,
100 years of
course it has.
humanity.
Oh,
hasn't it?
hugely. Yeah, absolutely hugely.
Yeah.
Interesting, though, right?
Yeah, very.
As the price of oil is low and offshore operations unprofitable, oil companies find themselves in difficulty. In 1998, they begin to merge together and combine forces. 6 giant oil companies are born that would become the richest and most influential in the world. In the Middle East, the military presence of the United States begins to raise concern. On one hand, radical Islamists do not want the presence of an Israeli ally on their soil. On the other, some consider the sanctions imposed on Iraq and Iran as too heavy. On September 11, 2001, the United States becomes the target of a major terrorist attack on its territory. 15 of the 19 terrorists were Saudis, raising grave concerns. The US actively seeks new sources to reduce oil dependency on the Saudis. In Africa, production accelerates after the discovery of large offshore fields off the Gulf of Guinea. In the Middle East, the United States invades Iraq under the pretext of its war against weapons of mass destruction. A few years later, the country's oil would be back on the international market. Iran, for its part, opens its market to new rising Asian powers such as China and India.
Look at the price.
Not only that, one thing you notice about a lot of these oil-producing countries, the royal family of these countries, or the rulers or the leaders of the country, are very, very wealthy, but the citizens not so much.
Yeah,
so the money's not cascading down from the natural reserves they've got in the countries.
Not spreading.
So you look at like Nigeria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Saudi, UAE, Qatar. You look at their leaders and the leading families. Very, very super wealthy.
That's where all the main money's going to. But then everyone else, it's a bit thin on the ground.
Yeah.
Isn't that what tends to happen though? You look at Amazon and Jeff Bezos, all that money's come from the death of the high street, and everyone buys everything from Amazon now.
Yeah, but I'm sure the Amazon the Amazon staff are cascaded out. He's a business. That's very different.
And that's private business
very
as well.
Different. This is going into country reserves.
Yeah, I suppose.
This is sovereign wealth, and a lot of places it goes into fund that.
This is the money that the country should be making for itself.
Correct.
So that, Amazon,
it's natural. This is natural resources.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
It technically belongs to everyone.
Correct.
When you're a national
it
of
should
that
go
country.
make money from it. That should, go to encourage other businesses in the country.
You look at some of the oil Nigeria produces.
Yeah.
It's one of the largest producers. Well, it's one of the largest oil reserves in the world.
Yeah.
Wow. And yet, look how poor the country is, but look at the leaders, very, very wealthy.
Yeah.
I watched the thing about that. I feel like is the oil off Somalia as well? Because I feel like I watched something where all the fishermen the water was so poisoned with oil that's why they turned into piracy, a lot of them, because they used to fish and now the fish are dead. But maybe that's spill off from all the ships going through the they go past the Horn of Africa, don't they?
Well, that's because they'll come around the corner there from you got Oman and then the Yemen, which is still grey on there, just because it's not a member of OPEC, but they'll have to come up there to go through the the Red Sea and then into the Suez Canal, sort of thing. But it's
or maybe it was Nigeria that I was thinking of, where it's just that polluted.
West Africa's more oil driven than East Africa.
Yeah.
The supply of oil in the world stimulates the economy. Growth skyrockets, mainly in emerging countries. In addition, Wall Street traders speculating on black gold push prices further upward. But the financial crisis of 2008 would cause a sharp drop in prices.
Wow.
Venezuela, over a few years, discovers it holds the largest known oil reserves in the world, putting it ahead of Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Interesting that Venezuela is now an extremely unstable.
That's been for years and years and years. And it used to be. I think the price of a gallon of petrol in Venezuela used to be something like 7 pence.
Wow.
It's crazy, don't know what it sits at now. Someone will tell us what it sits at now, but it went through crazy times. Venezuela inflation was like skyrocketed for there was all kinds of issues.
But isn't it the same again, like a fairly poor country in general?
Again, but
again with all this oil, you'd expect it to be.
But it goes down, it filters into one pocket type thing.
That's it.
Or that one.
Conglomerate pocket. Small group of people.
Yeah.
With more global demand for oil, its price rises again. The unconventional exploitation of petroleum becomes profitable despite the difficulty in its pumping and treatment. Thus, in Canada and Venezuela, oil companies rely on the exploitation of huge oil sand deposits. As this thick bitumen is found near the Earth's surface, forests are raised to extract the oil. It is then transformed with more expensive, highly polluting techniques. While offshore now provides 30% of global production, oil companies try exploiting deeper deposits. In the Gulf of Mexico, an attempt to make the deepest borehole in the world fails, causing one of the world's worst-known oil spills. In the United States, improved technologies such as fracking now make it possible to pump shale oil, the reserves of which seem enormous. This oil is wedged between different layers of solid rock. A fluid is injected at high pressure to break the rock and release the black gold, which is then pumped. Numerous such reserves discovered in the United States cause the country's production to explode. The fact that the biggest oil consumer in the world becomes a bigger producer does not please its Saudi ally. Saudi Arabia then wants to make the production of unconventional oil unprofitable by dropping prices. To achieve this, Saudi Arabia persuades OPEC to flood the oil market. The price of the barrel drops, making oil production barely or sometimes not at all profitable. But the oil industry of the United States resists and continues to increase its production. With oil abundant and cheap, world consumption continues to rise and approaches 100 million barrels per day. Wow. 2/3 of the oil used in the transportation industry is the main emitter of carbon dioxide. In the maritime sector, heavy fuel oil used by ships emits 3,500 times more sulfur than diesel fuel, causing severe air pollution. The United States and Europe react by creating zones where heavy fuel consumption is prohibited. Since the beginning of the modern era of oil, many oil spills cause major environmental damage, with the Niger Delta probably being the most affected region, with 60 years of oil spills largely ignored. Saudi Arabia undergoes its own policy changes, being faced in recent years with a large fiscal deficit. OPEC countries are forced to appeal to other producing countries to together try boosting the price of oil. This includes Russia, the second largest crude exporter in the world. The United States, in contrast, continues to increase production to keep prices low and to support growth and the economy. The country eventually becomes the largest oil producer in the world. While IPCC experts are sounding the alarm and call for drastically reducing CO2 emissions to limit global warming, we have currently found enough oil to carry on for at least another 50 years at current rates. Saudi Arabia now speaks of diversifying its investments to prepare for the post-oil era. Iran, which has the third largest oil reserves in the world, suffers since 2018 from sanctions imposed by the United States aimed at choking its oil sales. In Venezuela, the country is hurt by low oil prices and the country never really benefits from its huge reserves. Political instability could potentially impact exports, which currently mainly benefits China and Russia. Meanwhile, oil companies remain among the most powerful entities in the world. In 2017, 5 of them figure in a list of global top 10 companies with the highest turnover. The International Maritime Organization imposes drastically reduced sulfur emissions goals for vessels by 2020. This could force the industry to abandon heavy fuel oil in favor of other hydrocarbons, which may push up its demand and price. If the price of a barrel increases, the exploitation of unconventional oils could restart with renewed vigor. This includes areas such as the Arctic, which shows promise of holding vast deposits. And with polar ice caps melting, it makes it possible to explore new areas potentially rich in oil.
It's quite scary stuff, really.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I think Britain kept hold of the Falkland Islands.
Had something
to do with the oil fields, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
And
okay.
also the Nationals class themselves as British, don't they? In the
But
Falklands.
I think it would have been cheaper to just bring them all back, and if there was nothing there, there's a reason behind it, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's always a
Usually
reason.
is,
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's not
there
just
is.
because a few hundred people go, yeah, we're British and we want to stay British. And mate,
Yeah.
there's a few million quid each, go move to Burnley.
Yeah, a video like that highlights how corrupt and sort of all over the place.
It's so political as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
What stood out for me on that map was all them countries that are members of OPEC are all very volatile countries. Every single one of them.
Yeah. They're not.
There wasn't
not
one country there that was
are they?
stable.
No.
Absolutely.
They kept saying the anti-Israel sentiment, and it's like, is that literally just racism?
Well, that's what started out originally, wasn't it? That was back in, what was that?
It was in the 40s. It was
It was very early on. I can't remember what year it was when he said there, but it was very early on, sort of thing.
But countries didn't like Israel's allies, so America.
But did you notice who the allies were?
Spain,
It was USA, Spain, Netherlands,
Denmark, or was it
Netherlands, and I think South Africa.
Yeah.
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 It was a few like little strange sort of like
Yeah.
pockets there, wasn't there?
But you always,
Go on.
I was just saying, you always wonder what will happen when it does run out, though, because one day it will, because there's not an infinite amount of oil, is there? To a lot of these countries, you think, what they're going to diversify into, like they're mooting, Saudi Arabia are going to do that, diversify.
I mean, Saudi Arabia could just fill themselves with solar fields, couldn't they, and then export electricity to the world.
Sand.
Maybe sand as well.
Yeah.
Plenty of sand
Used in the building trade.
But,
No,
yeah.
I think what countries like are looking at. I mean, you look at what the UAE have done, and it's they've sort of like expanded into tourism. So tourism, hub and spoke services for like major airlines. You got Emirates, Etihad. Countries like are looking at becoming like major hubs, maybe global hubs for shipping with free zones and free ports. So you could become, like the centre of a pendulum service.
Yeah.
That goes, that services the world for everything you need, for all your needs.
Right.
But
Okay.
it's,
I don't think the vast majority of people. I think the bubble will burst with the tourism industry in places like Saudi and stuff like that.
It's not massive in Saudi at the moment, but it is if you take into consideration what they do for Umrah and what they do for.
If you look at the World Cup,
what's the main Muslim when they all go to
Mecca.
Mecca, yeah.
Mecca.
So
Yeah.
you got places like that where they, it's humongous events that go about in the Islamic calendar.
Yeah, huge.
I just think a lot of countries like that, Western tourism is never going to be amazing. As much as they push it with Dubai and places like that, it's all kind of fake, isn't it?
It is.
And it's all trendy, and it'll move on to the next place quite quickly.
Possibly, but I think Dubai is quite sustainable for what they're trying to put in place.
Right.
It is a very sort of like hotbed for 5-star, 7-star, whatever they want to classify themselves as.
Yeah.
But it's very luxury holidaying.
Until you watch
again,
them pump out the toilets out of the hotels into those, what was it, 18 trucks a day?
You've got a lot of laws that some people, it's their laws and it's what they abide by, and a lot of people don't agree with them.
Don't
so
go
a lot
there
of people
then.
don't go, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of tourism from Britain is like your package holidays, isn't it? And it's,
you've got to respect
fitting over there, but
you've got to respect other cultures. If you're going to
Yeah,
their
yeah,
country,
absolutely.
even if you disagree with the rules, you've got to play the game.
Yeah, of
'cause
course you have.
It's not your house. To
find
make the
out
rules.
find out before you go. If you don't agree with them, then just don't go. That's what you do, isn't it?
But with the oil wealth, there's certain countries there that's definitely got to sort of like cascade that money down to the citizens. It never happened. Not in our lifetime.
Yeah,
The
no,
infrastructure
true. I
minimum.
think
If
so.
Venezuela's got one of the biggest reserves in the world, the infrastructure there, they should be in flying cars. Free healthcare for everyone.
But it just shows how volatile is the price of
Corruption that
Yeah,
takes
precisely.
over. It's like the drug industry. It's people want to get rich, and the richer people get, the more richer they want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes to them instead of the citizens, instead of into the the country's economy being siphoned off.
You look
Isn't it,
what
I
happened
suppose?
when Boris Yeltsin, when the collapse of the Soviet Union, when Putin took over with the oligarchs. Prior to Putin taking over, what the oligarchs took was all this. They bought off all the privatized industries across Russia and the US and the USSR for nothing. They got it all for nothing. So all these
Just took 'em
people,
over,
Boris
didn't
Berezovsky and Roman Abramovich and people like that, were buying all this stuff. They were buying all this stuff for nothing, and then all of a sudden they become multi-billionaires overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were looked after, but then Putin said, right, no longer unless you listen to what I say.
It's madness, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't make me hopeful for the world in general when you look at things like that and you realise it's not about people, it's not about the little people, and it's literally about that. It's about oil, it's about industry.
You watch documentaries, mate. You watch documentaries, mate, on people like Boris Berezovsky, and when he goes down and he got all his money out of Russia, moved to London, settles in London, drives past an old Edwardian mansion that's worth probably like 300 million quid in the Oxfordshire countryside, pulls up and goes, my house now, I'm buying it. Guy goes, I'm not selling it. He says, you are. Here's your money. It's cash in the bank in Switzerland. Does some kind of deal. Next thing, he's living there.
Yeah.
Tell me that's fair.
Yeah. Money and power.
Money equals power. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course it does.
Yeah.
Live with it. Deal with it.
No, it's the way of the world. Like when we did the history of the entire world, you realise that stuff doesn't change.
No.
Yeah.
It's different fights, but it's all about the same stuff.
Sometimes it just goes from different one region to another. Sometimes
and how irrelevant we are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's,
not us,
you can't
not
say
us
that
three.
about office blokes. I mean, office blokes aren't irrelevant, but
no, we're good.
Most relevant people on YouTube, aren't we?
Very interesting that though. I enjoyed that.
I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. Yeah,
it was really good.
I hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget like and subscribe. Otherwise, we're going to come and get you. Charge you for it. And we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.